The wind howled over the cliffs, bending the few hardy trees that clung to the rocks. Waves slammed against the jagged edges below, spraying white foam into the night air. Each gust of wind carried a salty sting that bit at the skin and whispered secrets no one dared to hear. You can almost feel it, the storm's edge brushing against your face, sharp and relentless. Elena had arrived at the town by sheer chance, or perhaps by fate. She couldn't remember the letter that had guided her here, only that it felt urgent, impossible to ignore. The small coastal town seemed almost frozen in time. Narrow cobbled streets wound between old stone houses, their windows darkened, as if the town itself were holding its breath. But it wasn't the streets or the houses that drew her attention. It was the lighthouse. Perched at the edge of the cliffs like a sentinel, it towered over the town, a white column streaked with age and storms. Its light swept across the darkness in slow, deliberate circles. And in that moment, Elena felt a strange familiarity. She had never been here before, yet the lighthouse seemed to know her. Almost as if it had been waiting. She could hear the whispers of the townspeople even before she met them. They moved quickly past her in the narrow streets, faces pale and eyes wide with unspoken fear. Murmurs followed her, stories of disappearances, of voices calling from the lighthouse on stormy nights, of travelers who never returned. But Elena did not feel fear. She felt curiosity, an almost magnetic pull toward the tower that loomed above the cliffs. The closer she got, the more the wind seemed to shift, swirling around her, carrying fragments of sound, words almost inaudible, broken by the storm. And then, she saw it, the door of the lighthouse, slightly ajar, creaking as if inviting her inside. No one was there. Only the smell of salt, old wood, and faint smoke lingered in the air. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with anticipation. Something waited for her inside. Something she needed to see. The spiral staircase wound upward in darkness. Shadows twisted along the stone walls, moving with the flickering light of a single lantern that swung in the wind outside. Every step Elena took echoed like a heartbeat in the tower. Each echo seemed to speak, whispering fragments of secrets. You've come, finally. She froze, gripping the railing. The words were barely audible, like a thread of sound carried on the wind. She wanted to retreat. She wanted to run back to the town, to the safety of the known. And yet, something stronger held her in place. Something deeper than fear. Something she could not name. As she climbed, memories she didn't recognize began to flicker at the edge of her mind. A child running along cliffs, the lighthouse in the distance, a beam of light cutting through darkness. Was it a memory, or a dream? A warning. The storm outside intensified, waves hammering the cliffs as if echoing her racing heartbeat. Finally, she reached the first landing, where a small chamber opened off the stairs. Dust hung thick in the air, illuminated in narrow beams of the lighthouse's light. In the corner, a table held a journal, its pages yellowed with age. Her hands shook as she picked it up. The handwriting was hers, or so it seemed. Words written in careful, deliberate script. The storm will come. The lighthouse chooses the brave. Elena's breath caught. How could this be? Who could have known she would be here, at this exact moment, in this exact place? She flipped the pages, reading more notes that seemed to anticipate her every question, every doubt, every fear. A sound startled her. Footsteps. Slow. Above. She was not alone. Her pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet she couldn't move. She was drawn upward, toward the top of the tower. As she ascended again, the light from the top flickered and illuminated a figure, briefly, only for a heartbeat. A shadow standing just beyond the spiral staircase, indistinct, yet profoundly familiar. And then, as suddenly as it appeared, it vanished. The wind outside howled louder, as if the storm itself were testing her resolve. Elena realized that she was no longer climbing a tower. She was walking into the unknown, a place where fear and courage collided, where reality and memory blurred. And somewhere in that collision lay the truth she had been searching for her whole life. Why me? She whispered, though her voice seemed swallowed by the storm. And then she heard it again. A voice, not hers, not entirely human, but familiar in tone. Soft, almost gentle, yet firm. Because you can see the light where others see only darkness. The words sank deep, reverberating in her chest. Fear had not left her, it had transformed. It had become awareness, clarity, a call to action. Elena paused, letting the silence fill the space between the storm and the tower. In that quiet, she realized she had been running toward this moment without knowing it. Every choice she had made, every fear she had faced, had led her here. The lighthouse was not just a building. It was a test, a guide, a mirror reflecting the courage she had yet to recognize in herself. The spiral staircase narrowed, the top just a few steps away. She could see the beacon's golden light spilling from the windows above. It promised revelation, but demanded bravery. Her hand on the final railing, she took a deep breath. The storm raged around her, waves smashing into the cliffs, wind tearing at her coat, but inside, a strange calm had taken root. This was the moment she had been chosen for, or had chosen herself for. And then, the door at the top opened with a slow, deliberate creak. Beyond it, the golden light flickered, and for a brief second, she saw a figure, a guide, a guardian, a shadow of herself, standing patiently. Waiting. The storm had waited for her. The lighthouse had waited for her. And now, it was her turn. Elena stepped forward. The spiral staircase seemed endless, winding upward into shadows that clung to the walls like whispers. Each step echoed through the tower, bouncing back in haunting rhythm. Elena's pulse matched it, fast, erratic, yet measured. The storm outside raged louder, waves slamming against the cliffs, but inside the lighthouse, there was a stillness, as if the tower itself was holding its breath. She paused for a moment, leaning against the cold stone, listening. Footsteps, hers or someone else's. The shadows danced, thrown by the lantern light, twisting along the walls like living things. She pressed forward, compelled by curiosity and a strange, unshakable sense of destiny. The staircase opened into a small chamber, dust swirling in the golden light filtering through narrow windows. A desk sat in the center, cluttered with old papers and a journal, yellowed with age. Elena approached it cautiously, her fingers trembling as she traced the cover. The handwriting inside was unmistakable. It was hers, yet she had no memory of writing these words. The storm chooses those who dare to face it. You will find what you are seeking, but only if you embrace the shadows within. She shivered. How could this be? Who had written these words, and why did it feel like they were written for her, in her own hand, long before she arrived? A sudden sound froze her in place, a soft tap, almost imperceptible, echoing from above. Someone, or something, was moving within the tower. Her heart pounded, a drum in her chest. She wanted to flee, to abandon the mystery and retreat to the safety of the town below. And yet, she couldn't. She had come too far. The storm, the lighthouse, the whispers, they had all been leading her here. Climbing again, Elena felt the weight of memories pressing down on her mind. Images flashed, fragmented and fleeting. A child running along jagged cliffs, the lighthouse beam cutting through darkness, voices calling her name in the wind. Were these memories hers, or echoes of someone else's life intertwined with hers? She paused at a landing, looking out the narrow window. The storm churned below, waves crashing into the cliffs with relentless fury. The lighthouse's beam sliced through the darkness, illuminating the chaos. Elena realized, with sudden clarity, that the storm was more than weather, it was a reflection of the turmoil within herself. Her fears, her doubts, her regrets, they had all followed her here, converging in this place, demanding confrontation. A whisper broke the silence. Do you see now? The voice was soft but carried a weight that made her flinch. It seemed to come from the shadows themselves. Elena's eyes scanned the chamber, but it was empty. Yet the words clung to her, echoing in her mind. Above, at the top of the tower, a faint light flickered. She climbed toward it, each step a test of courage. With every footfall, the walls seemed to breathe around her, contracting and expanding as if the lighthouse itself were alive, watching her, judging her readiness. The upper room opened into a space bathed in golden light, warm and surreal against the storm's fury outside. And there he was, the figure she had glimpsed before, standing at the far end, indistinct, yet profoundly familiar. His presence was commanding, yet comforting. A reflection, perhaps, of something she had buried deep inside herself. I've been waiting for you, he said. His voice was layered, echoing through the chamber and inside her thoughts. It was both a question and an answer, a challenge and a guide. Elena's throat went dry. Why me? She whispered. Because you are willing to see what others ignore, he replied. Because you are willing to face the storm within, not just the storm outside. Because you are ready to confront the shadows that shape your life. Her mind raced. Every fear she had ever felt, every choice she had avoided, every regret, it all seemed to converge in this room. She had thought courage was about facing the world. She realized now that true courage was about facing herself. The figure stepped closer. The town fears what it cannot understand. The lighthouse does not judge. It does not reward. It reveals. And it reveals only to those who are ready. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She understood then, the lighthouse had never been a trap. It had never been a threat. It was a mirror. It was a test. It was a guide. What must I do? She asked. Her voice was steadier now, though a tremor lingered. Confront what has been hidden. Face the truths you have avoided. Accept the fears you have denied. Only then can the light guide you. The storm outside seemed to react, waves crashing harder, wind howling with renewed intensity. Elena closed her eyes. She saw herself, not as she appeared, but as she truly was. Flawed, afraid, doubtful, and yet, capable, stronger than she had believed. When she opened her eyes, the figure had vanished. The room was empty. Only the light remained, pulsating with quiet intensity. Elena felt the weight of the decision pressing on her. She could turn back. She could descend and pretend the tower, the storm, and the whispers had never existed. Or she could step forward into the unknown, into the light, into herself. Her hand moved to the lever controlling the lighthouse beacon. She hesitated, heart hammering. The storm outside seemed to pause, as if the world itself waited for her choice. She inhaled deeply. Fear was still there, yes, but so was clarity. The storm was not her enemy. It was her reflection. The tower was not a prison. It was a path. The shadows were not threats. They were truths waiting to be faced. Elena pulled the lever. A beam of light shot upward, cutting through darkness, illuminating the cliffs, the sea, the chaos below. The storm seemed to shift, responding to her courage. In that moment, she understood the lighthouse had been waiting for her, not just to survive the storm, but to see herself clearly, to face her own shadow. And then the whispers returned, gentler now. You are ready. Elena exhaled, the tension leaving her in a rush, mingling with the sound of rain and wind. She felt the first flicker of something she had not known she was seeking: hope. Courage. Purpose. The journey was far from over. She knew that. The storm would rage again. Shadows would return. But for the first time, Elena understood something essential. She was not just walking through the storm. She was becoming the lighthouse. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, the real trial is just beginning. The spiral staircase ended abruptly, opening into a room bathed in golden light, warm and inviting, almost unreal against the storm raging outside. Elena stepped forward, her heart still pounding from the climb, her hands trembling from anticipation. The figure she had glimpsed in episode 2 was nowhere to be seen. The room was empty, yet she did not feel alone. The light itself seemed alive, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. She moved closer to the center, where the lighthouse's beacon mechanism stood. The lever, worn from countless storms, gleamed faintly, almost as if inviting her to act. She paused, inhaling deeply. The storm outside still raged, waves smashing into the cliffs with relentless fury. Yet inside, there was calm, a quiet, insistent calm that whispered to her soul. This is your moment, she whispered to herself. Your choice. Your courage. The wind howled, carrying with it memories she had tried to bury, moments of fear, failures, doubts, and regrets. Faces she had hurt, chances she had abandoned, dreams she had left behind. All of it washed over her like the tide below the cliffs, relentless and powerful. And yet, she realized something profound: these were not her enemies. They were guides, markers of her path, reminders of her humanity. Elena's hand moved to the lever. Her fingers hovered, reluctant yet determined. The light in the room flickered as if acknowledging her hesitation. She thought back to the figure's words: to light the beacon, you must confront what lies inside. Not the town, not the storm, yourself. Her mind wandered to the townspeople she had passed on her way here, their fear and suspicion of the lighthouse, of the storm, of the unknown. They did not understand, and perhaps they never would. But it did not matter. This was not for them. It was for her. For the courage she had yet to embrace. For the light she had yet to realize was within her all along. She thought of the storm itself. Once she had feared it, believed it to be an enemy, a force of chaos and destruction. Now she understood it differently. The storm was not outside her. It had always been within. Her doubts, her fears, her insecurities, they were the storm. And she had climbed the lighthouse to face it, to shine a light through it, to transform it into clarity. Elena pulled the lever. The beacon roared to life, a golden pulse cutting through the darkness. Light streaked across the cliffs, danced over the waves, and pierced the storm with brilliance. The wind seemed to pause, the rain softened, and the ocean reflected the radiance, shimmering as if acknowledging her triumph. She closed her eyes. She felt the weight of every choice she had made, every fear she had faced, every step that had brought her here. And for the first time, she did not feel small. She did not feel lost. She felt complete. She was no longer running from herself, from the shadows, from the storm. She had become the lighthouse. And then she heard it, the faint whisper she had first heard in the tower, now stronger, certain, as if it were speaking from within her. You are ready. Elena opened her eyes to see the room bathed in steady light. The figure was gone, yet she did not feel abandonment. She felt guidance, clarity, and the quiet understanding that the journey was ongoing, that life itself was a series of storms to face, shadows to confront, and lights to ignite. The door to the lighthouse opened, revealing the cliffs, the town, the ocean beyond. Elena stepped outside. The wind no longer seemed hostile, it was a companion, lifting her hair, brushing against her cheeks, reminding her of her own vitality. Below, the waves churned, but the storm had passed. A new calm had settled over the town, over the cliffs, over the sea, and within her. As she looked down, she saw the townspeople emerging cautiously from their homes. Their eyes widened as they saw the beacon cutting through the mist and darkness. But Elena did not wait for their understanding. She knew it was not their recognition she sought. It was her own. She began walking toward the edge of the cliffs, feeling the cold spray of the ocean, the rough texture of the stones beneath her feet. She closed her eyes and let herself breathe, fully and deeply, letting the wind carry away the remnants of fear, the residue of doubt. She was here. She had climbed. She had faced the storm. She had illuminated the shadows. A thought came to her, clear and unwavering. Courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was the choice to move forward despite it. And in that moment, Elena understood that life's true storms were not the ones outside, but the ones inside. Every obstacle, every challenge, every shadowed moment was a storm. And each one offered the same choice, to flee, or to light the beacon. She looked out at the horizon, where the first hints of dawn were beginning to stain the sky with soft orange and pink. The ocean sparkled, catching the first light like a field of diamonds. The town below would not understand the struggle she had faced, the shadows she had confronted, the fears she had illuminated. Perhaps they never would. But that was not the point. The lighthouse had always been a mirror, reflecting not just her courage, but her humanity. It had shown her that strength is quiet, that true clarity comes from facing what you fear most, and that the light you seek in the world begins within. Elena took a step back from the edge, letting the wind embrace her, letting the light wash over her. She realized that the journey she had begun in episode 1, the call, the climb, the confrontation, was not just a story of survival. It was a story of becoming. Becoming herself. Becoming the light. And then she whispered, softly but with certainty, I am ready. The storm was gone, yet the lighthouse remained. It would stand through countless nights, countless storms, countless seekers. And somewhere in its steady beam, it carried her story, her courage, her choice, a reminder that the greatest light does not come from the world outside, but from the strength within. Elena descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, each breath measured. She felt a sense of peace she had never known, a quiet understanding that the trials of the storm were not to punish her, but to prepare her. Each challenge, each shadow, each moment of fear had been necessary. And as she reached the base, she turned for one last look at the lighthouse, its beacon cutting through the mist, unwavering and eternal. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be storms to face, doubts to overcome, and choices that would test her again. But she also knew that whatever came, she carried the light now. The lighthouse was not a place. It was a part of her. And with that thought, Elena walked into the town, into the dawn, into life itself, ready to face whatever storms may come, and ready to shine her own light into the darkness, wherever it might fall. The tower, the storm, the shadows, they had all been waiting for her. And she had finally arrived.